the Museum of Forgotten Professions. The last time someone asked Marcus Chen what he did for a living, he told them he was an exhibit. They laughed. He didn't. It was 2110, and Marcus was 42 years old. He had a job that made sense once, back when the world still needed people who could do things with their hands. He was a watchmaker, not the kind who assembled smartwatches or calibrated neural interface timepieces. The old kind. The kind who worked with springs and gears and tiny screws that could barely be seen with the naked eye. He fixed mechanical watches, wound them, adjusted them, made them tick. There were maybe 30 people left on Earth who could do what he did, and all 30 of them worked at the museum. But before we begin, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Are you in New York? Tokyo? Maybe somewhere small? Somewhere quiet? And here's what I'm really curious about. Are you tucked in bed right now, using this to fall asleep, or wide awake, diving into the what-ifs of tomorrow? If this story speaks to you, hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel grow and tells me you want more like this. All right, let's begin. Part 1, The Living Collection. Marcus's workstation sat in Gallery 7, between the typewriter pavilion and the Hall of Manual Navigation. His bench was authentic 19th century, salvaged from a Swiss workshop that had closed in 2047. The tools were real too. Loops, tweezers, tiny hammers, a wooden case full of watch parts so small they looked like metallic dust. Every day at 9 in the morning, the museum opened, and every day Marcus sat at his bench and worked. The visitors would file past, hundreds of them, sometimes thousands. They'd stand behind the velvet rope and watch him through the transparent barrier. Point, whisper, take holos. Their AI companions would narrate facts about mechanical timekeeping, about the history of craftsmanship, about the obsolescence of manual labor. Marcus would keep his head down, focus on the watch, pretend they weren't there. Today, he was working on an Omega Speedmaster from 2019. The balance wheel needed adjustment. Delicate work. The kind that required absolute stillness. He could feel his heartbeat in his fingertips as he made the microscopic turn. "Look, he's actually touching it," a woman said. She sounded amazed, like she was watching a magic trick. "With his hands," her companion added. "No gloves, no neural assist, just fingers." Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't look up. The Museum of Forgotten Professions had opened in 2098. A private institution funded by the Nostalgia Collective, a group of billionaires who'd made their fortunes in AI and automation and felt, apparently, a little guilty about it. The concept was simple. As human jobs disappeared, as AI became better than people at nearly everything, someone should preserve the memory of what work used to be. So they built the museum. At first, it was just artifacts, tools, photographs, historical recreations. But artifacts weren't enough. People didn't connect with objects anymore. Everything was virtual, ephemeral. What people wanted, what they'd pay to see, was authenticity. Living authenticity. That's when they started recruiting. Marcus had been working in a small repair shop in Portland when they found him, one of the last shops in North America that still serviced mechanical watches. He was barely making rent. His customers were dying off, literally. The youngest person who'd come in that year was 73. The museum offered him a salary, benefits, housing. All he had to do was keep doing what he loved. He should have read the contract more carefully. "Excuse me." Marcus looked up. A teenage girl stood at the barrier, her hand raised like she was in school. Her neural interface glowed softly at her temple. "Yes?" Marcus said, "Can you explain what you're doing?" This was part of the job. Engagement, education. He was supposed to talk to visitors, answer questions, make the experience interactive. "I'm adjusting the balance wheel," Gathat Marcus said. "It controls the rhythm of the watch. If it's off by even a fraction, the whole thing runs fast or slow. Why not just use the calibration AI? Because this watch doesn't have AI. It's mechanical. It runs on springs and gears." The girl looked confused. "But why would anyone want that?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. "How do you explain beauty to someone who's never seen the need for it?" "Because," he said finally, "it's beautiful." The girl nodded slowly. She didn't understand. He could see it in her face. But she smiled anyway, thanked him, and moved on. Marcus returned to his work. Around noon, the museum staff brought him lunch. A prepackaged meal, nutritionally optimized, delivered on a tray through a small door in the barrier. He ate at his bench. The visitors watched. Some of them took hollows of him eating. He'd complained about this once, asked if he could take his lunch break in private. The museum director, a woman named Yuki Tanaka, had smiled sympathetically. Marcus, you're not just a craftsman here. You're part of the exhibit. People want to see how you live, how you work. The authenticity is what they're paying for. I'm not an exhibit, he'd said. I'm an employee. Of course, Yuki had replied, but the line between the two is part of what makes this place special. That conversation had been 3 years ago. By evening, Marcus's fingers ached. He'd finished the Speedmaster and started on a Seiko automatic from the 2030s. The museum's collection was extensive, thousands of watches, all in need of maintenance. He'd never run out of work. At 6 o'clock, closing time, the visitors filtered out. The lights in Gallery 7 dimmed slightly. Marcus began cleaning his tools, arranging them precisely in their case. Another day in paradise, huh? Marcus turned. Robert Kim stood in the doorway of the typewriter pavilion next door. Robert was 57, gray-haired, thin as wire. He was one of the museum's stenographers, typed on an actual typewriter, real keys, real paper. The sound of it had driven Marcus half crazy for the first year. Something like that, Marcus said. Robert stepped closer to the barrier between their exhibits. You see the new posting? What posting? Check your tablet. Marcus pulled out his museum-issued tablet. There was a message from administration, a memo. He scanned it quickly and felt his stomach drop. Effective immediately, all living exhibits will be required to remain in their assigned galleries for extended hours to accommodate the museum's new late-night authenticity experience program. Living exhibits may request privacy curtains during non-display hours. They want us here overnight, Marcus said. 3 nights a week, Robert confirmed, starting next month. That's not. They can't. Read your contract, Marcus, Section 12, subsection D. The museum reserves the right to modify display schedules as needed for educational programming. Marcus's hands clenched. We're not displays. Robert's expression was sad, tired. Aren't we? Part 2, The Boundaries Blur. The first overnight shift was a Thursday. Marcus arrived at the museum at 5 in the afternoon, carrying a small bag with toiletries and a change of clothes. The daytime visitors were just leaving. He watched them go, envious. They got to leave. They got to go home. Yuki met him at Gallery 7. Thank you for being flexible about this, Marcus. I know it's an adjustment. Do I have a choice? She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. We're pioneers here, pushing the boundaries of experiential education. Future generations will look back on this work as revolutionary. I fix watches, Marcus said. That's all I do. You do so much more than that. You're preserving a piece of human history, living history. She gestured to his workstation. We've added some amenities, a cot in the back corner, a privacy screen you can pull when the museum closes at 10. There's a small bathroom attached to the gallery now, behind the display. Marcus looked where she pointed. Sure enough, there was a new door, barely visible, built into the wall. You built me a bathroom in the exhibit. For your comfort, Yuki said brightly. This is insane. This is the future, Marcus. She checked her tablet. The late-night experience begins at 8. We're expecting about 50 guests. They've paid premium rates for the privilege of seeing our living exhibits in a more intimate setting. Intimate? Relaxed. Natural. Not performing, just existing. She touched his shoulder. Just be yourself. Then she left. Marcus stood alone in Gallery 7. The overhead lights had been adjusted to a warmer tone, more like home lighting. Atmospheric. The barrier was still there, of course, separating him from the space where visitors would stand. He sat at his workbench, picked up a watch, put it down again. At 8 o'clock, they came. The late-night authenticity experience, guests were different from the daytime crowd. Quieter. They moved slowly through the galleries, speaking in whispers. They lingered. Some of them brought wine. It felt like they were at a zoo after hours. Marcus tried to work, tried to focus on the watch in front of him, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being observed, studied. The daytime crowds were one thing. They moved past quickly, took their hollows, left. These people stayed, watched. Some of them sat on benches and just stared. A man in his 30s approached the barrier. Expensive clothes, neural interface so advanced it was barely visible. "It must be peaceful," the man said. "Working with your hands like that. No distractions, no AI assistance." Marcus looked up. "It's work, but meaningful work, real work, not like what I do." "What do you do?" The man laughed. "I manage AI systems that manage other AI systems. I haven't produced anything tangible in 15 years. He leaned closer to the barrier. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to make something real." Marcus set down his tools. "Then learn." "Learn?" "Watchmaking, woodworking, cooking, anything. You have time. You have resources." The man's smile was sad. "I wouldn't even know where to start. Everything I learned through interfaces, downloaded directly. I've never actually learned something, not the slow way." He stood there for a moment longer, then moved on. Marcus watched him go, and felt for the first time something other than resentment, something closer to pity. At 10 o'clock, the museum closed. The guests left. The lights dimmed further. Marcus pulled the privacy screen around his cot and lay down. He couldn't sleep. The museum at night was strange, not quite silent. The building made sounds, settling, climate control, and other things. Footsteps, voices, or maybe he was imagining it. Around midnight, he heard something that definitely wasn't his imagination. Typing. He sat up, listened. Yes, the unmistakable sound of a manual typewriter, clacking keys, the ding of a carriage return. Robert. Marcus pulled on his shoes and stepped out from behind the privacy screen. The gallery was dark except for emergency lighting. He walked to the edge of his exhibit space, to the barrier that separated him from the hallway. He couldn't leave his gallery. That was the rule. Living exhibits remained in their assigned spaces during museum hours, and technically the museum was always open to them now. But the barrier wasn't locked. It was just a rope and a sign. Marcus looked around. No cameras that he could see. At least, none visible. But there were probably dozens. Watching. Recording. Everything was recorded now. He stepped over the rope. The hallway felt enormous. He hadn't walked through the museum as a visitor in 3 years. He'd almost forgotten what it felt like to move freely through space, to not be separated by barriers and glass. The typing grew louder as he approached the typewriter pavilion. Robert sat at his desk, illuminated by a small lamp. He was typing furiously, pages scattered around him. He looked up when Marcus approached. "Couldn't sleep either?" Robert said. "You're working." "Can't help it. When I hear the silence, I have to fill it." He gestured to the pages. "Letters. I'm writing letters." "To who?" "No one. Everyone." "Does it matter?" Robert pulled the current page from the typewriter, set it aside, loaded a new one. "You know what I realized tonight? I haven't left this building in 2 weeks." Marcus felt cold. "What?" "I live here now. Not officially, but effectively. I take my meals here. I sleep here 3 nights a week. On my off days, I'm too tired to go anywhere, so I stay in my apartment, which is museum housing anyway." Robert's fingers hovered over the keys. "We're not employees anymore, Marcus. We're specimens." "That's not." "What would you call it?" Marcus had no answer. Robert started typing again. "You should go back before someone notices." Marcus returned to Gallery 7, climbed back onto his cot, lay in the dark. Specimens. The word echoed in his head until morning. Part 3. The Discovery. It started with small things, a change in the wording of their employment documents. Living exhibit became their official job title. Not craftsman, not educator, exhibit. New rules appeared. They weren't allowed to use personal devices during museum hours. Too anachronistic, too distracting from the authenticity. Their breaks were scheduled now. 15 minutes, twice per shift, taken in designated areas. Behind barriers, and the visitors grew bolder. Someone reached over the rope one day, tried to touch Marcus's tools. Security stopped them, but gently, like they were protecting the exhibit, not Marcus. A woman asked if she could commission him for personal work. The museum said no. His work belonged to the institution. Marcus started to feel it. The walls closing in, the reality of what he'd become. Then he met Elena. She appeared one Tuesday morning, led into Gallery 7 by Yuki. Elena Foster was tall, black, early 40s. She wore practical clothes and carried a worn leather bag. She looked tired. "Marcus, this is Elena," Yuki said. "She's joining us as our newest living exhibit." Elena is a calligrapher, one of the last practitioners of traditional hand lettering. Elena smiled. It was a tight smile. "Nice to meet you." "Your workspace is in Gallery 9, Yuki continued. "Just down the hall. I'll let you two get acquainted." She left them alone, well, as alone as you could be with a barrier between you and a dozen cameras watching. Elena looked around Gallery 7, at Marcus's workbench, at the cot in the corner, the privacy screen. "How long have you been here?" 3 years. "And before this?" "I had a shop in Portland." Elena nodded slowly. She understood. "I had a studio in Brooklyn, taught workshops, made wedding invitations mostly, custom pieces." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Then the AI calligraphy programs got good enough that no one needed me anymore. So you came here. I didn't have a choice. This or starve." Elena met his eyes. "They told me this was a job, an opportunity, preserving cultural heritage." "It's not a lie," Marcus said carefully. "We are preserving something." "Are we?" Elena looked at the barrier, at the space beyond where visitors would soon stand. "Or are we just performing our own obsolescence?" The question haunted Marcus. Elena's arrival changed something. Maybe it was having someone new, someone who saw the museum with fresh eyes, or maybe Marcus had just been waiting for someone to say out loud what he'd been thinking. They found ways to talk. Brief conversations when the galleries were quiet, whispered exchanges during breaks. Elena was smart, observant, and angry. "I've been reading the museum's marketing materials," she said one afternoon. "Do you know how they describe us?" "I try not to look. Living artifacts of human capability. Not people. Artifacts." Marcus's hand stilled on the watch he was repairing. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just noticing." Elena glanced around as if checking for listeners. "Have you tried to leave?" "Leave." "The museum. The job. Your contract." Marcus shook his head. "The contract is 5 years. I'm locked in." "What happens if you break it?" "Financial penalties. I'd owe them more than I could ever pay back. They paid for my relocation, my training, my housing. It's all in the contract." Elena's expression darkened. "Same. I owe them 3 years of service or 200,000 in penalties." She leaned closer to the barrier between their spaces. "Marcus, I think we need to talk to the others." "The others?" "The other living exhibits. There are 37 of us now. Did you know that? 37 people, all trapped in contracts we can't break, doing jobs that don't exist anymore, living in a building we can't leave." "That's not... what would you call it?" The same question Robert had asked, and Marcus still had no answer. They met in the hall of manual navigation. It was 3 in the morning. The museum was closed. The overnight security was minimal. The living exhibits had learned to move through the building quietly, to avoid the cameras, to find the blind spots. There were 12 of them in the hall. Not all 37, not yet, but enough. Marcus knew some of them. Robert, the stenographer, Diane, who operated a manual printing press, James, who built furniture with hand tools, others he'd only seen in passing. Elena stood at the front. "Thank you for coming. I know this is risky." "Why are we here?" Diane asked. She was 62, gray-haired, suspicious. "Because something is wrong," Elena said simply, "and I think we all know it." The room was silent. "I've been going through the museum's records," Elena continued. "Public filings, financial statements. Do you know what the museum's largest revenue stream is?" No one answered. "It's not admissions. It's licensing." "Licensing?" James frowned. "They're licensing our images, our work, our entire lives." Elena pulled out a tablet, projected a document onto the wall. "Every moment we're here is recorded, high resolution, multi-angle, and the museum owns it all. They're selling it to AI training companies." Marcus felt his stomach turn. "What?" AI companies use us to train empathy algorithms, to teach AI what human work looks like, what obsolescence looks like, what dignity in irrelevance looks like. Elena's voice shook. We're not preserving human heritage. We're training our replacements to understand what they destroyed. The room erupted, voices overlapping, anger, disbelief. Robert stepped forward. Can they do that legally? It's in our contracts, Elena said, buried in subsection 47. We granted them full rights to our likenesses, our work product, our daily activities for the duration of our employment. We signed away our lives, Diane whispered. Not our lives, Elena said, but our images, our dignity, our choice in how we're remembered. She looked around the room. I think we need to leave. We can't, Marcus said. The penalties? What if we all leave? Elena interrupted. What if all 37 of us walk out together? They can't sue us all. They don't have the resources. And more importantly, they'd lose their entire collection. Without us, the museum is just empty rooms. They'd find replacements, someone said. Would they? Elena challenged. We're not just skilled, we're the last, the only. There are no replacements. Not for what we do. Marcus's heart pounded. This is insane. Is it? Elena looked at him. Marcus, when was the last time you felt like a person? Not an exhibit, not a specimen, a person. He couldn't answer because he couldn't remember. Part 4. The choice. Planning an exodus of 37 people was harder than Marcus had imagined. They met in secret, passed messages through old-fashioned notes, left in hiding places throughout the museum. They couldn't use their tablets. Everything digital was monitored. Some people refused to join. Too scared, too committed, too old to start over. But slowly, they built a group. 23 living exhibits who wanted out. The plan was simple. On a Saturday night, during the late-night authenticity experience, they would leave, together. Walk out the front door while the museum was full of paying guests. Make it public. Make it impossible to hide. They'd prepared statements, contacted journalists, arranged housing. Elena had found a lawyer willing to take their case pro bono, a young woman who'd built her career fighting AI companies. It should have worked. But 2 days before the planned exodus, Marcus was called to Yuki's office. He'd never been to her office before. It was on the museum's 3rd floor in the administrative wing, a place where living exhibits didn't go. Yuki sat behind a beautiful wooden desk. Real wood. Antique. Probably worth more than Marcus's entire annual salary. Marcus, thank you for coming. Please, sit. He sat, his heart hammered. I wanted to talk to you about your contract, Yuki said. You've been with us for 3 years now. You've been an exemplary exhibit. The visitors love you. Thank you. We'd like to offer you an extension, another 5 years with a substantial raise and expanded benefits. She slid a document across the desk. Take a look. Marcus picked it up. The salary was triple what he made now. The benefits included full health care, housing, even a retirement plan. More money than he'd ever seen. Why? He asked. Because you're valuable to us. You're the heart of Gallery 7, our most popular living exhibit. Yuki leaned forward. Marcus, I'm going to be honest with you. We know about the meetings. His blood turned to ice. We know about the plan to leave. We know who's involved. We know everything. Yuki's expression was sympathetic, almost kind. But we don't want to lose you, any of you, so we're extending this offer to everyone involved. Better contracts, better conditions, a real future here. And if we refuse, then we enforce the existing contracts to the letter, the penalties, the lawsuits. We have excellent lawyers, Marcus. We will win. And you'll spend the next decade in debt, unable to work in your field, unable to find housing. You'll lose everything. Marcus looked at the document in his hands, then at Yuki. We're not exhibits, he said quietly. We're people. Of course you are, and we value you as people. That's why we're offering this. Yuki stood. Take a few days. Think about it. Talk to the others. But Marcus, understand something. The world doesn't need watchmakers anymore. It doesn't need calligraphers or stenographers or manual navigators. The only place you have value is here. The only place you exist is here. She smiled. We're not your prison. We're your sanctuary. Marcus told the others that night. They gathered in the hall of manual navigation again. 23 people, now facing an impossible choice. It's a trap, Elena said immediately. They're trying to lock us in even deeper. Maybe, Robert said slowly, or maybe she's right. Where else do we go? What else do we do? We find new skills. We adapt. We survive. Elena's voice was fierce. We're human. That's what we do. I'm 62, Diane said quietly. I can't start over. I can't learn a new field. Everything I know is obsolete. Others nodded, murmured agreement. Marcus watched them, saw the fear, the resignation, the same thing he'd been feeling for 3 years. I'm leaving, he said. Everyone turned to look at him. I'm leaving, Marcus repeated, with or without the rest of you. I'd rather be poor and free than comfortable and caged. They'll destroy you, someone said. Maybe, but I'll be destroyed as a person, not an exhibit. Elena stepped beside him. I'm going to. Robert hesitated, then nodded. Me too. One by one, others joined them. Not all, some took the offer, some stayed, some chose security over freedom, but 15 of them decided to leave. They walked out on a Saturday night. The museum was full. The late-night authenticity experience was at its peak. Guests wandered the galleries, wine glasses in hand, admiring the living history. At exactly 9 o'clock, Marcus stood from his workbench. He set down his tools, carefully, with respect. He'd never treated his tools with anything less than respect. Then he stepped over the barrier, walked through Gallery 7. The visitors stared, whispered, confused. This wasn't part of the exhibit. He reached the hallway. Elena was already there, Robert, Diane, others. They walked together through the museum, through the galleries of forgotten professions, past the visitors who didn't understand what they were seeing. The front doors were locked. Of course they were. But Elena had a plan for this too. She walked up to the security desk, looked directly at the guard and said, "Let us out." "I can't. We're not exhibits. We're people, and we're leaving." The guard looked panicked, reached for his radio, but the journalist Elena had contacted was already there, outside the doors, with cameras, recording everything. The museum couldn't stop them. Not publicly. Not like this. The doors opened, and 15 people walked out of the Museum of Forgotten Professions into a world that had forgotten them. Epilogue, 20 years later. Marcus Chen was 62 years old when he opened his shop. Not a real shop, exactly, just a small workspace in a shared maker collective in Portland. But it was his. No barriers, no cameras, no visitors watching him work. He still fixed watches. There weren't many people who wanted them anymore, but there were some. Collectors, romantics, people who appreciated the beauty of mechanical things in a digital world. He made enough to live on. Barely, but it was enough. Some of the others from the museum had done well. Elena taught calligraphy workshops, training a new generation of artists who wanted to create something with their hands. Robert wrote books on typewriters and sold them as art pieces. Diane started a furniture restoration business. Some hadn't made it. The world was hard for obsolete people. But they'd tried. They'd chosen to try. Marcus heard that the museum had closed 5 years after they left. Without its living exhibits, it couldn't sustain itself. Visitors wanted authenticity, not empty galleries. The building was sold, turned into luxury apartments. He wondered sometimes what happened to the people who stayed, the ones who took the better contracts, whether they were still there, performing their obsolescence for cameras, training AI to understand what it had replaced. He hoped they'd found peace, whatever form that took. On a Tuesday morning, Marcus was working on a Rolex Submariner when someone knocked on his workshop door. A young woman stood there, maybe 25. She held a watch in her hands. "Are you Marcus Chen?" she asked. "I am." "The watchmaker who walked out of the museum?" Marcus's chest tightened. "That was a long time ago." "I know, I read about it in school. We studied you, the museum exodus." She held out the watch. "This was my grandfather's. It stopped working. Everyone says I should just recycle it, get a neural interface timepiece. But I don't want to. I want to fix it, and I want to learn how." Marcus looked at her, really looked, at her eager expression, at the watch in her hands, at the hope in her eyes. "Do you have time?" he asked. Learning takes time, real learning, not downloads, not interfaces, just patience and practice and mistakes. She smiled. I have time. Marcus stepped aside, led her into his workshop. No barriers, no cameras, just two people and a broken watch and the possibility of fixing it. Then let's begin, he said, and he started teaching her what his hands remembered. Welcome to Tomorrow Lore, where we explore the edges of possibility and remember what it means to be human.